Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's talk about a word you hear constantly, cloud computing. But what is it? Seriously, is it some kind of magical tech floating up in the sky? Or is it something way, way simpler? Let's dig in.
And you know this quote, I think it's just perfect because it cuts through all the marketing hype. The cloud isn't this mystical thing. At its core, it's really just a huge shift in how we all use computers. And it boils down to one super simple but powerful idea. You're just renting instead of owning.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with that big idea, someone else's computer. Then we'll get into the secret sauce that makes it all possible, the virtual machine. After that, we'll look at how you actually rent these computers, your service model options. We'll also cover how modern apps get packaged up so they can run anywhere, which is where containers come in. And finally, we'll wrap up with the big so what, the real power of the cloud.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, someone else's computer. I know it sounds a bit funny, but to really get what the cloud is, you first have to grasp this one fundamental change, this big move away from owning stuff to just renting it.
Just look at the difference here. The old way, if you wanted to launch a website or an app, you had to go out and buy these big, expensive physical servers. Then you had to find a data center to put them in, and you had to manage everything yourself. It was so slow, so expensive. But the new way? Totally different. You just run your application on computers that belong to someone else. You let the big cloud providers, like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure, handle all the physical hardware. You rent what you need, when you need it, and you get to focus on what actually matters. Your code.
Okay, so if the cloud is basically just a huge warehouse full of computers, you might be wondering, how on earth do companies like Amazon or Google rent them out to millions of different people all at the same time? Well, the answer is a brilliant piece of technology that is the absolute core building block of the cloud, the virtual machine. The magic trick here is something called virtualization software. So picture this. You've got this one massive, super powerful physical server sitting in a data center. This software is like a digital partition, or maybe a better way to think of it is a digital saw. It lets the cloud provider slice up that one giant machine into lots of smaller, totally separate, isolated virtual computers. And each one of those slices, that's what we call a virtual machine, or a VM for short. And this is where you really see the power of the cloud. A developer can literally, with just a few clicks, fire up what feels exactly like a brand new computer. It's got its own CPU, its own memory, its own operating system, and they can do it anywhere on the planet in seconds. It's incredible.
So, we've established that we can rent a virtual machine. Great, but how do you want to rent it? Do you want just the bare bones machine, or do you want more stuff included with it? And that brings us to section 3, choosing your service model. Honestly, the easiest way to think about this is like different kinds of rental agreements.
First up, you've got Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. This is the most basic option. You're basically just renting the virtual computer hardware. It gives you total control, which is great, but it also means you're on the hook for everything else, installing the operating system, doing all the updates, managing security, the whole shebang.
Now, if that sounds like too much work, you can move up to Platform as a Service, or PaaS. With this one, the cloud provider takes care of the operating system and all that boring maintenance stuff for you. It's a huge relief for developers because they can just forget about all that and focus on the one thing they really care about, writing the code for their app. And then we get to the most hands-off option of all, serverless computing. Now, let's be clear, the name is a little tricky because, of course, there are still servers involved. You can't escape them. The huge difference is that you never, ever have to think about them. You just write a little piece of code, a function, and the provider handles everything else. They run it, they scale it up to handle a million requests if they have to, and then, and this is the cool part, they scale it right back down to 0 when nobody's using it.
So this table here really puts it all together nicely. Think of it this way. IaaS is like renting just the computer hardware. PaaS is like renting the hardware and the operating system. And serverless? That's like renting by the second. You only pay for the exact moments your code is actually doing work. Okay, so no matter which of those models you pick, you still have to get your application onto that cloud computer, right? And you need a way to do it that's reliable and consistent. And that leads us to the modern standard for making apps portable, containers.
Honestly, containers are a total game changer. They solve the oldest, most annoying problem in all of software. The classic, but it worked on my machine. We've all heard it.
What a container does is it packages up your application's code along with every single thing it needs to run, all its dependencies, all the libraries, into one single universal package. And that package is guaranteed to run exactly the same no matter where you put it.
Yeah, just think of a container as this neat, self-sufficient little bundle. It's got the code, sure, but it also has the runtime, the system tools, the libraries. Literally everything it needs to do its job is packed inside. And here's a good way to think about the difference between a container and a virtual machine. A VM is like renting an entire empty house. You have to bring in all your own furniture, set up the utilities, everything. But a container, that's like renting a perfectly furnished apartment inside that house. It's much smaller, it uses the house's main plumbing and electricity, but everything you need is already inside, ready for you to move in.
But what happens when your app gets really, really big? Like, so big it needs hundreds or even thousands of these containers all running at once. Well, you need something to manage all of that chaos. You need an orchestrator. And that's where tools like Kubernetes come into the picture. Just think of Kubernetes as the conductor of an orchestra, or the brain of the whole operation. It automatically starts, stops, and connects all those containers so they work together perfectly as one single, massive application. It's exactly how huge services like Netflix and Spotify can handle millions of users without breaking a sweat.
Okay, so we've talked about virtual machines, the different ways to rent them, and how containers package up our apps. Let's pull all these threads together now and talk about the real power of the cloud. Why does any of this actually matter?
I mean, this really is the big question, right? We've gone through all this tech stuff, so what? What's the real benefit? Why has basically the entire tech world shifted to this way of doing things?
Well, the benefits are just massive. First, speed. Companies can launch new servers and applications in seconds, not the weeks or months it used to take. Then there's automatic scaling, which is just incredible. Imagine you're an online store. For a huge sale like Black Friday, you can instantly add 100 extra servers to handle the traffic, and then the very next day, you just turn them off. You only pay for what you use. But maybe most importantly, it lets developers focus on what they're good at, building cool stuff, instead of worrying about managing a bunch of physical machines in a basement somewhere. So if you take away just one thing, let it be this. Cloud computing is really just about running your software on powerful computers owned by someone else, so you never, ever have to think about the physical hardware. And that really brings us to a final, pretty big thought. As more and more of our digital lives run on hardware that's owned by just a few giant companies, it makes you wonder, if everything is running on someone else's computer, what happens next? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.